as we bring Frank Klose to do a little bit of Phillies mailbag here. The Phillies schedule coming up here, they're going to be challenged. I mean, they're 2 games back, but they're going to have a challenging time. I think I read this right before I was going on vacation, Frank, that they have the most difficult schedule out of all the wild card contenders the rest of the way here. So they do not have an easy little pocket coming up. If they're going to win and get themselves into the wild card, the only easy pocket I see is coming up this weekend. Miami, Pittsburgh. Other than that, everybody else they play has playoff aspirations. So this is a big start right here. August 20th, here we go. 2 games back. We feeling good?
Well, I think the Phillies at times have really played down to the competition, and they've come up big against some of the better teams. So I don't. Maybe it's good that the Phillies are getting challenged the rest of the way, because it seems like it's those series against the Marlins where they fall short the most. So perhaps they can bring what they brought to the Cubs, who of course were a first-place team when they faced them against good teams like the Boston Red Sox, and then hopefully they don't fall too flat against the Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Marlins.
All right, let's get into a couple things before we get to the Phillies mailbag with you, Frank. Number 1, the lineup tonight, all right? You got Rhys Hoskins leading off in the DH role. Let's start there. Your thoughts and reasoning, I guess it's on base percentage for Rhys Hoskins. I don't understand how anybody that has ever played a baseball game or has followed this game, other than just saying his on-base percentage is pretty good, can justify Rhys Hoskins hitting leadoff.
Yeah, well, that's actually the first mailbag question, but I don't really get it. I've kind of sided with Gabe Kapler on a lot of things that he's gotten a lot of flack for over his time as Phillies manager, but this is not something that I particularly agree with. When the first lineup came out and he was batting first, I kind of tweeted just to get people's sentiments out there. I said, how many times in baseball history have managers batted their slowest player leadoff? I got a few answers back. I got the likes of Joey Votto's done it, but of course Joey Votto was doing it with a 400 on base percentage. But Rhys Hoskins, I don't know how batting somebody leadoff in a place that's unfamiliar like that will break somebody out of a slump. If you ask me, that seems to maybe even put extra pressure on Hoskins. I mean, I know they want him to see more pitches, get more at-bats, and the leadoff hitter certainly will get more at-bats and more opportunities to sort of get out of it. But so far, since he's been a leadoff hitter, he's come to the plate 16 times. He has 1 hit, got hit by a pitch once, and I think he's walked twice. Or I think it's 17 times, pardon me, because I hit by pitch. So he's not exactly getting on base. As a leadoff hitter, I really believe that Gabe Kapler was going to come up with a different solution for this series, given that he struggled as he has since he made that move. But I don't really get this.
I don't either, Frank. I'm there with you. I mean, he's a guy that, look, even his on-base percentage has dipped a lot. I mean, his numbers in the second half post-All-Star break over the last 2 years have been awful. I mean, his on-base percentage goes from about 410 down to about 315 in the second half of the season. He's an under 200 hitter post-All-Star break the last 2 years. I mean, I don't know if that's something that the Phillies should be worried about moving forward.
Well, he's got a lot of talent. I think we all know that. And maybe it's just a matter of fatigue. Last year was really his first full season where he played that many games, that he was in a pennant chase in the major leagues. So baseball is a mental game in a lot of respects, and maybe he needs a break. That's the one thing I don't understand. You have somebody who can play first base here or there. Logan Morrison could play first base, maybe not wonderfully in the field, but why not just give him a day or two off? Pick the right tough right-hander that's on the mound and just give him a rest. Maybe he just needs to relax, right? A lot of the talk of why Charlie Manuel became hitting coach was he needed people to loosen up, and if you're not getting loosened up by being shoved in the leadoff spot, maybe just watching for a little bit is a good thing, And I know people make a big deal out of benching somebody, and say, "Oh, well, he got benched." Well, again, the mental aspect of the game. Take a breath, you recalibrate, and then maybe you can be your old self going forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess since somebody asked you that question, let's start with it. How can the manager be so blind to lead off Hoskins every game for a week, and it's going into another week now? I understand of the idea of getting him more at bats to break him out of a funk, but he has been horrendous. He should be benched for 2 or 3 games or moved to 6 in the order. Let me ask you. Forget we just kind of touched on some things, but where do you think is the best spot for Rhys Hoskins?
Well, I do say this in my response to that question in the mailbag. I would just try to replicate that opening day lineup. We talked about this before, Mike. The Phillies had gotten away from that opening day lineup, and a lot of it had to do with the fact they lost the likes of Andrew McCutchen and were kind of scuffling for a while to try to find their way again. But when they sort of replicated that lineup again, the Phillies had a nice winning streak. So what I would think the Phillies should do is put together a lineup where Corey Dickerson leads off and plays left, kind of filling in where Andrew McCutchen was. And then you go down the rest of the lineup. We have Segura batting second, and Segura, he's been hitting well, although it comes in bunches. He's spoken about how comfortable he is batting second. The Phillies have him batting fourth and fifth lately. I would like to see him batting second as he's comfortable. Then you have Harper, and if those two guys are getting on base in front of them, because Dickerson and Segura get on base a ton, Bryce Harper's going to drive in some runs. And behind him, leave Hoskins where he's at. And if Hoskins still struggling a little bit, he's got JT Realmuto behind him to maybe have him help him see some more pitches, or even if he's still in the funk, can come up behind him and come up with a big hit. Mm-hmm. And then you go Cesar Hernandez, and then you go, instead of Herrera and Franco, you've got Kingery and Hastley, which is not a drop off from the previous two that used to occupy those spots. And I think you have a pretty good lineup, and maybe Hoskins can work out of that funk, because right now it's almost like you're starting off the game with an out. Or if he does get on base, he's kind of clogging the bases as well, because he's got speedier guys behind him.
It's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
I had put out an everyday lineup. I was at the game Wednesday night. Sorry I never ran into you there. I kind of got comfortable in a seat and just decided that I'm pretty good in this spot right here. But Wednesday night I tweeted out, I like Quinn, Segura, Harper, Hoskins, Realmuto, Dickerson, Kingery, Hernandez. I feel it gives you balance. Now, unfortunately, Quinn is hurt, but I thought he was really giving them something. His speed is a problem. He had been on a tear for about 2 weeks there. He was hitting over 400 in that 2-week span. I mean, he scores, he steals, he gets on base, and over. The poor guy just can't stay healthy. I just don't know that they can rely on him. But if he's out there, I'm hitting him 1, Segura where he likes 2, Harper 3, Hoskins 4, Realmuto 5, Dickerson, I like playing him as much as possible. And then, of course, you can use Bruce on certain days. You can use Hastley to give somebody a day off if you need to. But Kingery, 40 games left. I'm sticking with that group right there.
Yeah, Roman Quinn, that you really got to see it the last couple of weeks, just how dynamic a player he is. And if you take the Phillies for what they say, this is not as serious as his other injuries. But you know what? The Phillies were going to have to make a roster move anyway. They were going to probably have to option Adam Hastley to AAA, and maybe they just felt that better safe than sorry, because once September hits, you can add some extra players. So maybe Quinn will be back, and maybe he can give you that spark, because in his minor league career, he was very dynamic like that. He had a lot of power. You don't expect it from him, but power in the form mostly of a lot of doubles. So he could hit the ball into the gap or to the fence. And get a lot of doubles and triples. So definitely a spark for the lineup. And when the Phillies had a lot of their success against the Cubs, he was right in the middle of it.
I thought, I was kind of down on him, and the last couple of weeks I have changed my opinion to say, look, if he's healthy, he can be a guy that really helps this offense out. That speed is just too much. I mean, that is just a lot for teams. I mean, you don't steal bases a whole heck of a lot in this day and age anymore, but he almost beats out ground balls to second base. You know what I mean? Like he busted down there, and he plays a tremendous center field.
Yeah, and the lineup, and even that play that he ended up getting hurt on again. I mean, he almost beat out that routine ground ball to second base, but that part of the problem with Quinn so far has probably been his speed, because he really does bust it, and a lot of these little injuries are strains. This time it's his groin again, but he's also had an oblique strain, and that might be the unfortunate result of his aggressiveness. And when you have somebody with that kind of talent, it's really hard to say, well, don't run as fast as you can so you don't injure something. So the Phillies are going to have a tough decision with him this offseason probably because he is out of minor league options. And you kind of want to have somebody like that on your roster if you can. But if he's injured, then what do you do? This is a game right now where, well, luckily next year there will be a 26th man on the available teams on the roster. So maybe they can afford to carry somebody like him next year. But it's really hard right now where you have to go to somebody from the minor leagues. Usually, if one of your extra men is out injured, and it's really challenging, especially when you have a bullpen that has 8 arms in it, to really find that bench that's going to do the various things that you really need, and somebody like Quinn can really help you do.
Frank Klose covers the Phillies, 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Jim wants to know, if needed, is Charlie Manuel an in-season option to replace Gabe Kapler? I mean, there's only 40 games left. They're not changing anything now.
Right. So I think first and foremost, I think it's fair to say Gabe Kapler is not going anywhere this year. I didn't really delve into next year and what they might possibly do. I know some people might have an agenda that they want to see Gabe Kapler go. But let's just pretend for a minute that he talks about an in-season replacement in case maybe Gabe gets sick for a day or maybe he gets suspended for a day or two. I think they're going to Rob Thompson, the veteran bench coach, candidate for the Yankees manager job. He lost out to Aaron Boone, but he was the bench coach under Joe Girardi, highly respected around the game. He's kind of known for keeping people loose too, like Kapler. So I really don't see any, if it is such a short amount of time that they might need somebody for a couple of games, I think they go Rob Thompson. I think Charlie Manuel is not going to manage again. I know people would like the idea of that, but, at 75 years old, I know what Jack McKeon did it at, 72, I think, but I think he's content to take his little perch at the dugout and provide his hitting expertise. I don't think he's looking to manage again, even if it is for a game or two.
He left a small, tiny little sliver of possibility. He said, I don't want to manage again. It would have to take something really big. So I guess it wasn't 0.0%, but it sounded like he pretty much is not interested. And for all the people out there, he's not even going to be back with the team next season in this capacity, correct?
Yeah, it looks like they'll make a long-term solution this offseason. When you fire a hitting coach, what are your options usually? Were they going to promote assistant hitting coach Pedro Guerrero to the position? And that's not really a new voice. And when you look around the Phillies organization, you could grab somebody from one of the other minor league teams. But it seems that that was an internal voice that they could plug in that would have great impact just because of the respect factor for him. And that just buys some time to the off season when other candidates will be available. Because you're not plucking somebody out of somebody else's organization at the time of the year. So it was tremendous that they had an in-house candidate like Charlie Manuel who could really get everybody's attention the way that he did. So this is definitely just to get to the end of the year, and then they'll see who's available. Some guys might become available from other organizations, or maybe they can steal somebody from somebody else's organization. But that kind of thing doesn't happen in season.
All right, Frank, let's get to another question in the Phillies mailbag here, which is kind of an interesting one here. What are the Phillies going to do with pitching in 2020? Heck, they don't even know what they're doing with pitching probably half the week. How do Adonis Medina and Spencer Howard play in? What odds of maybe getting a free agent like a veteran like Cole Hamels coming back?
So first and foremost, I'll address Adonis Medina and Spencer Howard. I don't think they're either at the point where they're ready to jump into a major league rotation. They've been kind of playing it slow with some of them. They put Adonis Medina in the bullpen this past week in Reading, and he got lit up big time, giving up 7 runs in a relief appearance. I think they're both going to come to spring training. I think they remain having dynamic arms, and I think the Phillies would love to see those develop. And I think to do that the best, you're going to see them start the year at AAA.
Can I just interject and ask a question here?
Sure.
Is that frustrating, though? Why is it that it seems that a lot of other organizations they get their guys up and into rotations or lineups at 20, 21, 22, and the Phillies seem like they're waiting till 25, 26 to get these guys going?
Well, Spencer Howard's a different story. Spencer Howard was drafted out of college. When you draft a guy out of college, it's not necessarily the same level of competition as if somebody went through the system. You can sort of naturally go through a system level to level and work your way up. If you're drafted out of high school, for example. So we see with Adam Hazley and Mickey Moniak drafted one after the other, that Adam Hazley came up to the major leagues quickly, despite being drafted a year after Mickey Moniak. So in the case of Adonis Medina, he was signed as a minor league free agent out of Dominican Republic. He's just 22 years old at the moment. So he's coming of age now, perhaps a couple years in age, younger than Spencer Howard, or a year or so younger than Spencer Howard. But just for the fact that, you come out of college, you get drafted, you go to Williamsport, and then after Williamsport, there's still Lakewood, Clearwater, Reading, Lehigh Valley, all these different levels of competition to rise through. So I think it depends on how you acquire the player that things happen like that. And both of them are kind of sort of coming of age at the same time. So I think they're going to be in spring training, and I think that they have the chance to impress, so that if the Phillies need somebody, they can go get one of them, and it's not the same as grabbing a veteran off the scrap heap.
Let me just ask you, where was Howard drafted?
He was drafted in 2017, and I think it was a second round.
Okay.
So
I look at a kid like the kid from Atlanta, Soroka. Now, he was a first-round pick, late first-round pick. He's 22 years old, and he's the best pitcher.
Well, let me counter with this. So Aaron Nola, he was drafted 1 year. The next year, he was in the major leagues. So it's not that the Phillies don't do it. It probably depends on the player and how well they can go through the system. When the Phillies drafted Aaron Nola, for example, they thought that he had the maturity to be ready to go in the major league soon, and he rose right through. And Spencer Howard, he just got to Double-A. His first couple starts were kind of but he's had a couple nice ones. So I think he's somebody who could come up next year. But the problem is, if you just sort of assume that they'll be available next year and you don't get other players. Now that leads me to the other point. He talked about Cole, although I don't know if he meant Garrett Cole or he meant Cole Hamels. If you count on those guys as being in your rotation next year now, you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. I'd rather see the Phillies get somebody like Garrett Cole, who's a tremendous ace-type pitcher who will be a free agent for sure, and the Astros trading for Zach Greinke to try to win it all now, all but guarantees that he will be a free agent. You can perhaps save the Howards and Medinas in case somebody at the back end of your rotation doesn't work out, or if you're going to count on Jake Arrieta and he gets hurt next year, you have somebody you can pop in who's going to be an impact-type player from your own organization.
And by the way, Arrieta was moved to the 60-day DL today, and Eichhoff has been optioned to Lehigh, so he's off the DL. Eichhoff, Arrieta takes his spot.
Correct. And, speaking of Arrieta, the one point I made on this question, too, is if he's talking about Garrett Cole, what I'm worried about seeing is the Phillies doing what they did with this Patrick Corbin situation this year and say, well, this 6th year, we don't want to give him that because, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you sign a 29-year-old pitcher to 6 years, how different is that than you signing Jake Arrieta, who's 32, to 3 years? You're still paying for those same years. So the Phillies have been willing to pay for those back-end years, but they did it on the likes of Arrieta or their trio of relievers like Robertson and Neshek and Hunter, and we saw them all break down, right? So I would like the Phillies to get somebody like Garrett Cole, pay him the money that he deserves, have an impact ace for a few years, and then if he breaks down at the end, well, that's your Jake Arrieta contract at the end. And if he means Cole Hamels, by the way, I could see Cole Hamels coming in to be a Drew Smiley, Jason Vargas type, who will be a lefty at the back end. And Cole Hamels certainly has a lot of good starts in him right now, but we've seen him not be as durable as he was in the past. He did have that oblique strain, and he did get roughed up by the Phillies, so he does have his down games as well. So I think to really address the whole pitching situation, adding an impact ace like a Garrett Cole really does help set the tone. And then you try to get somebody towards the back end like a Cole Hamels who can be useful in their starting rotation. And certainly there's the whole sentimentality. You know, everybody would love to see Cole Hamels back. Maybe that gets you an extra little boost in terms of fan excitement, and that other pitchers that might pitch just as well won't get. But you really need to add 2 starters to this rotation for sure. In addition to Nola, Arrieta is supposed to come back. And then if you want to keep one of the Eflin, Pivetta, Velasquez category, I would not try to go forward with more than one of those if you possibly can.
No, I don't think anybody said they were interested in that scenario.
Right, and then the unfortunate thing is the Phillies went with all 3 as their main options, and then the Phillies were left with really nothing behind them, and an Arrieta injury boot.
Yeah, which is, you know, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is they wanted to see more. They thought those guys would grow, and not one of them did. I mean, I don't know what happened to Eflin. I heard you saying yesterday that, you know, the whole heavy thing, and I mean, he just absolutely faded out from June on. I mean, he was pitching pretty well. He was your most consistent starter for 3 months of the 2.5 months of the season. Pivetta, I don't know. I mean, maybe he can do something in the bullpen and be useful in that role. But, you know, Eichhoff, he was a guy. He was like a throw-in that deal. He was a surprise, and I feel like people just keep waiting for him to become that surprise that he was when he first got the chance in that Hamels deal.
Yeah, and he's battled his injuries as well. You know, 2016 was a tremendous season for Eichhoff, and then once that happened, you thought, when the Phillies added Eichhoff,
he looked like an innings eater.
Deal,
he looked like a guy who could eat innings for you.
Right.
Which
I mean,
this team could
and
use
Phillies,
for quite frankly.
Right, and the Phillies added him in the deal because they basically said, if I'm subtracting Cole Hamels from my roster, somebody has to pitch every 5th day, and he seemed like he was the one that they could throw in there right away, and it would at least give them some innings. And when he did, he surprised. Now, how he's going to respond from this other injury remains to be seen. They optioned him to AAA, but I think he's going to join the team September 1st for sure. And or who knows if this Eflin Pivetta combo that happened the other day works out as it did the other day, maybe he'll be up sooner than that. They can option either of those guys as well. So I think we're going to get one last look at Jared Eichhoff this September. But it's really hard to count on somebody who's had those injuries the last few years the way he has. So and that's the story of the Phillies rotation. They're constantly accumulating arms that you just can't rely on as known quantities. So, I mean, other than Aaron Nola.
When you're trotting out Smiley every 5th day, I mean, look, I said a couple of weeks ago, the only thing, at least Smiley has the, endurance or what to get you 6 in. I mean, Velasquez, at 5 1/3, he's done. He's out of gas. At least Smiley I can have faith that he can.
And you know what? That really underscores the Phillies' need to have all these relievers too. They take 8 relievers, which ties up a roster spot you could use for another bat sometimes, and you're stuck with a Sean Rodriguez because you need somebody that can play infield and outfield, and you don't necessarily have the impact out of those types of positions as you might have if you had an infielder and an outfielder, and you had your choice to build those rosters. So the trickle-down effects are huge. And somebody was saying to me the other day when it looked like the Phillies would have to option Adam Haseley before the Roman Quinn injury, I said, someone was like, well, why don't you just have one fewer reliever? Because let's face it, in fact, I remember when they went to 7 relievers under Terry Francona, and I thought 7 was a lot. But right now they can't afford to have less than 8 because all these guys are trotting out aren't giving you more than 5 innings.
Well, and once they get into the bullpen, that's another story. The way Kapler manages the thing, getting guys in, out. I mean, he's just not very good at that part of the game.
Here's the thing. I would respectfully disagree because I think when he was at the situation that he had to, and this is why I don't blame him, when he had to put J.D. Hammer and Edgar Garcia, who are both very, very talented pitchers and I think will have an impact in the major league someday. when they had to be rushed to the back end of a bullpen because he he didn't know what to do for a while. At least the Parkers and the Morans and now they added Hughes. I think they're going to calm that down a little bit more. And if you notice in the recent weeks, you haven't really had those types of bullpen issues like you had before because, for a while it was a wild card. Do I put Austin Davis in? Do I put J.D. Haver in? Do I put in Edubray Ramos? Do I put in Yaxel Rios? I mean, I could go on and on with these names. And Kapler, the poor man, what's he going to do? Just put the names in a hat, shuffle it up, and just pick one? I mean, because really there was no reliability. But I think, even though I was very critical of Matt Klentak for not getting more of an upper-end arm for the bullpen this trade deadline, Marin and Parker have been pretty good. They are not guys you put out on the mound and you expect to blow up like you used to. And I think it actually kind of helped that they knew for sure that Robertson and Neshek and Hunter were all kind of done for the year. And they're going to try to throw Sir Anthony Dominguez again this year, but we'll see. When you kind of knew that those guys were out of the picture and he did get a few veteran-type arms, at least you could sort of move forward and try to come up with a plan other than just grasping at straws day to day, not knowing who to put in next or which guy was coming down 476 that particular day. Because it just seemed like day to day, again, all those names, the Davis, Rios, Ramos, Hammer, Garcia, De Los Santos, Cole Irvin. Who did I forget? There's even more than that. By the way, one of them was Ranger Suarez, but he's actually been pretty good.
All right, Frank Klose, more on the Phillies, at Frank Klose, and the Phillies Red Sox. Big series tonight in Fenway. Phillies have not fared very well at Fenway Park. They've been awful, have never won a series out there, 20 years, 0-6-2, and that's your matchup. Phillies, Nola, Johnson for the Red Sox. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Mike. That'll change tonight.